time we got here? 2 minutes after. Want to start? Want to wait? Yeah. I guess we'll kind of saunter in slowly here. Yeah. Okay. I'm getting the green light from Claire here, so she rules the roost here. So we do what we're told. Everybody that's on the call already, everybody that will be joining in later. Of course, we archive these on the YouTube page, and I think at this point it seems like more folks are catching us there than live, which is fine. Whenever you catch us, thanks for tuning in. First of all, hello and welcome, Luke, myself. We're doing another episode of our Cocktails and Conversation as part of our Industry Insider series. Claire here is working all of the controls, and she'll be the one answering questions and making everything happen. Claire, you want to stand in front of the camera for a second so they can see what you look like? No? She's very shy. Oh, there she is. Wave. Thank you. Excellent. So Claire, there's a person, not a bot, responding to your questions. So we're really excited. We've had some really great guests so far, and none that have I been more excited about and more friendly with than our guests for tonight. We've got Jake Parrott and Lee Edwards from Haus Alpenz. Welcome, fellas.
Welcome. Good evening.
Outstanding. Joining us from Atlanta and Virginia, respectively, correct?
Lee's in Atlanta. Lee's in Atlanta.
Oh, okay. The order is important.
Yeah.
Okay. Not respectively, but yes, Atlanta and Virginia. Great. So that's kind of the one benefit of us all learning how to do virtual stuff. We can actually do these things. Don't get me wrong. We're very excited about having you in person. But it's really nice to be able to get both of you in the same room, and even if you're in different states. So it's been real great. Now, Jake, we've known each other for a while, and I've always enjoyed hanging out and chatting with you. You're one of my favorite people to pick their brains. And Lee, we're both really excited about meeting y'all. So first of all, you work for Haus Alpenz, which is an importer. And what are your titles?
We're sales reps. We work, we work a territory of states and distributor partners, educating and selling. We're a small company, and we all have pretty varied but pretty deep knowledge of a lot of things. So we all also work more or less with our producers when we want to bring new products into market, both on making sure that the formulations are correct and the packaging is good, but also that we have cocktails and usage notes ready for when we hit market. And that's where Lee does an invaluable job for us with new products as well as with the products we already have. But we're sales reps. We're traveling sales reps. Soon to be traveling.
It seems like most of the people we interview, their companies give them like 14-word titles.
Well,
this is kind of an interesting departure.
We have I think 17 or 18 people in our entire company, so that prevents us from getting into all that really complicated jargon.
Yeah, we have 14 jobs rather than 14 titles.
Got it. Yeah, we're kind of the same here. My business card just says bartender. So that's what it is. It's like, do you really care about the other stuff? Do you care that I know how to work QuickBooks? Does that really affect you and all? I don't think so.
Some people may want to talk to you about that.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. A couple of things. We're going to be talking, we're going to use that, but we're going to talk about these products here tonight. And before we get started, they're all in a category of aromatized fortified wine. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Getting the nods. My question, I guess, is could you give a brief, you have a lot of aromatized fortified wine in your category. Jake, you were recently on a class we did with Dolan Vermouth, which is also like vermouth being the most famous sibling in the fortified aromatized wine family. Would you mind spelling it out for us, like what makes this category kind of a category and what the difference is?
So there's a little bit in law that governs a lot of this, and European law and American law are similar, although not exactly the same. The key word is wine. In order to be within this category, at least 75% of what's in the bottle has to be grapes. They don't have to be fermented, and we can talk about more of that more when we get to the Matteis, but they've got to be grapes. Now, the history of putting bitter stuff in wine is literally as old as wine itself. And so there have been, people wanted bitter stuff because until very, very recently, that's all medicine was making your stomach feel better. So, or maybe changing blood flow in a slight way. But, bitter stuff in wine goes back to at least 5000 BC. Wormwood in wine, or what we would call vermouth, goes back to at least ancient Greece. So, essentially, what an aromatized wine is grapes, a little bit of fortifying spirit, which helps to stabilize the wine during production. It also is what you infuse the herbs in. Sugar, although sugar can be high or low depending on what you're trying to do and what market you're trying to reach. A bitter thing. Today we're going to talk about 2 quinquinas, or wines bittered with quinine, and then all the other botanicals, right? All of these things are made with a great number of botanicals, which, brings complexity, brings profile, helps to balance the sugar, what comes from the sugar in the grapes, and also gives each thing its particular personality.
Nice. You mentioned quinquina, so maybe first thing we should do is taste one. And you can tell us a little bit about what we're tasting, either one of you, and then maybe quinquina specifically seem to have like a hot moment in history, right? When it was kind of the rage.
Yeah, so the 3 big bitter botanicals that we talk about in the world of aromatized wine, 2 are endemic to Europe. Wormwood, which is the bitter in vermouth, and gentian, which is the bitter in Angostura bitters, but it's also the bitter in a category called Americano. So I don't know if you have a bottle of Cocchi Americano handy, you can hold it up real quick. But
Of course.
Americano is the Italian word for wines bittered with gentian. Now, cinchona, C-I-N-C-H-O-N-A, which is the tree that quinine, whose bark is used to extract quinine, doesn't grow in Europe. And so quinine came very late to Europe, really only in the early 1800s as a pharmaceutical preparation. In 1820, it was discovered to be an anti-malarial, which meant that it got sent with soldiers going overseas. But the rise of quinine in the late 1800s pretty much exactly mirrors the rise of CBD today, in that it became the craze, the wonder. Well, we won't use the word drug, but the wonder. And so wine producers, or people that handled grapes, saw an opportunity as people, wealthy people concentrated in cities, and railroads began to be built so that products could get moved all around, mainly talking about France here. And they took their grapes and infused them with quinine, and then wanted to sell them to what you might call the nouveau riche. But to do that, they would build these products that had both taste characteristics evocative of their region, but also marketing that was regionally evocative as well. And these things, which they called quinquinas, wines bittered with quinine, became advertisements for their place, both for the nouveau riche to go on vacation, but also to do business in sort of far-flung parts of France.
That's very interesting. And it's like some of them, they were such like health tonics. I'm sorry, we were talking on the phone the other day and I forgot. One of them actually was the sponsor of Tour de France, right? And they would like
both Beer and Bonal from our portfolio were sponsors of Tour de France.
Literally, there's pictures of the little cars blazoned with the product brand name, like handing shots of this alcohol out the window to bike riders on the actual Tour de France. It's like they're giving these guys booze while they're trying to exercise. Love it.
There's an old advertisement for some sort of quinine elixir that says, "Make your kids grow big and fat." which apparently was a good thing at the time. So,
well, if you can't, that'd be a thing.
indeed.
Okay.
So then to Mattei, Louis Napoleon Mattei was one of these people. He wanted to advertise Corsica to the rest of France. Corsica is an island, a beautiful island in the Mediterranean, and the Cap Corse, if you look at the big letters on the label, Cap Corse is the little spit of land at the northern part of the island. We like to call it the middle finger that Corsica raises to the rest of Europe, because Corsica is a pretty proud place. And so what he did is he took Corsican grapes, Vermentino, which brings a lot of acidity and brightness to the quinquina, and then Muscat or Moscato, which brings a lot of perfume and floral character and fruit to the party. He added quinine, and then to get that regional touch, that evocative touch, he used local citrus. So in the first of the two quinquinas that we'll taste, the Cap Corse Mattei Blanc, that citrus is called Cedrat, C-E-D-R-A-T. I'll put that in the chat. It's a good Google image search. These things are very funny looking, but extremely perfumed. So what you ended up with was something that had the acidity, the great acidity that wines from the region, from the island were known for, but then great fruit because the grapes weren't fermented. Again, this mixture called mistel, unfermented juice hit with alcohol right away. You can still call it wine for purposes of the law, but it acts differently. And then the quinine that everybody wanted. So both of these quinquinas come from that tradition, though their mixology is very different. And I'm going to turn it over to our mixmaster Lee to talk about Mattei Blanc and cocktails.
Okay.
Thanks, Jake. So I love mentioning what Jake said about the mistel because it presents a nice angle when you're contemplating how to use it. Keeping those primary acids and keeping those natural sugars from the grapes means that they don't have to add any additional sugar when making the Cap Corse. And keeping those primary acids, that malic acid that you get from an apple, different acid than, once those grapes have gone through fermentation and you've made a 12, 13% wine. So that's going to come across slightly different, in the cocktail. And so that's fun. That gives you a different aromatic and a different acid profile. But yet you're still keeping the sugars, somewhat low for the category of, aperitif wine. And that Cedrat is very special. It is, I don't know, Jake didn't mention, it's about the size of 1.5 pro footballs, those Cedrats. 1.5 to 2 pro footballs, one of them. And it's mostly pith. But that aromatic is so fantastic that comes from the skin. And that's that's what it's for. It has a relative, the Buddha's hand, that more Americans might know. But anyhow, the Cedrat definitely gives a lot of nuance to that Mattei Blanc, and we're really excited about this. This is something that it's still a newer product in our book, and we just look forward to everyone getting to know it better. Jake and I both consider it to be one of our. We just love working with it. We love showing it to people. It's so much fun. Now, the older people in Corsica tend to drink more Rouge. The younger people tend to drink more the Blanc. I see Americans probably ending up more on that Blanc side just because of how Americans like to mix. And this will go nicely with all your clear spirits. Which that's very popular. There's a lot of gin, a lot of agave, and a lot of vodka cocktails to make out there. So having this co-star to go along with those is it's going to be fun for a lot of people behind the bar.
Excellent. Yeah, as soon as I think I tasted it and ordered it the same moment, and we've had it on the menu, basically. Sporadically, but often since you launched it and since it was available in North Carolina. We fell in love with it. It's in some of our favorite cocktails that actually customers ask for when they're not on the menu. So we've really liked it.
It's on there right now in the vacation plan.
We have a tropical kind of, almost a tropical Negroni variation, which equal parts this,
Montenegro.
Amaro Montenegro, and the plantation pineapple.
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
it's interesting comparing it to other, white aperitif wines. It's got more measurable quinine than the Cocchi Americano Bianco. And in fact, Jake, are there any white aperitif wines out there that have more quinine measurably than the Mattei?
No, and it's a real tribute to the grapes that the texture of the grapes can stand up to the bitterness here. And of
You
course it
smell
helps.
the Moscato. Like you can smell that round, soft sweetness on the nose.
Yeah. And then all that acidity is coming from the Vermentino. And it's the acidity here that's so special, but it's also the acidity here that leads to one of my favorite characteristics, and this goes right into the cocktail y'all are about to make, is that both of these quinquinas from Mattei are very dilutable. And dilutability is great in that it gives you a lot of versatility in a cocktail. It also allows you to do lower alcohol drinks. And so in a restaurant context, or if you're making a drink before serving dinner to folks, it's going to keep people happy to then have wine with dinner or move on to their next drink. And of course, that bitterness gets people to buy food too. So, but I'm very excited for this cocktail. Grapefruit juice is a natural, natural
let's
for
do
Mattei
it.
Blanc. So let's do it.
So we're calling you raspberry spritz in an abundance of cocktail naming originality. Keep telling Luke to drink after this is over, but
It's research throughout the day.
Now we sent you all some samples. Do you have you guys gonna make drinks along with us or no?
I'm gonna do it later.
Okay.
I did a fair amount on Sunday night.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. So you mentioned grapefruit, and I love making drinks with grapefruit, although you can't have them all with grapefruit, or some customers can't have it. But what makes grapefruit pair well besides the Moscato grape? Is there something else that you find grapefruit really loves?
It's what grapefruit does to bitter things. Both grapefruit oil even more so than grapefruit juice, reduces the perception of bitterness. There's only so much bitterness that you can taste, and when you smell grapefruit, it starts to excite those bitter receptors on your tongue. And so when you drink the drink, you don't pick up as much of the bitterness. So it's an incredible buffer for cocktails.
Outstanding.
In fact,
I think that was actually one of the things I took out most when you came into the class with us. I think I had just started here, but adding that grapefruit peel to cocktails could actually lower the bitterness a little bit, make it a little bit more approachable for people.
one of our favorite things to do with Mattei Blanc is literally just to make a salty dog, right? Vodka and grapefruit juice with a salted rim, but with Mattei Blanc instead of vodka.
Oh, sounds fantastic. That's a all-day kind of beverage.
Yeah, we might call that a day drinker, Jake.
Good.
So you're talking about, I had some questions that came up, but then you went ahead and answered them. Except for the one thing is Cap Corse is French,
Yes.
correct? Okay. Corsica,
It's France.
I think it was Italian. Tempranillo, Moscato, Vermentino, is that you said?
Yeah.
And Moscato, I think of these as Italian grapes.
Is Vermentino?
Yeah.
So Corsica is part of France, but Corsican, the local language, Corsican is looks more like Italian, but change all the ending vowels to U, is essentially what Corsican looks like. Vermentino is called Vermentinu on the island, but it also grows all over the south of France, where it's usually called Rolle, R-O-L-L-E. And then Moscato, there's Muscat Petit Grain is grown all over France as well, especially in many of the same places Vermentino is.
So now is the island split between the two countries, or is it all French?
No, there's two islands there. The northern one is Corsica, which is French, and the southern one is Sardinia, which is Italian.
Ah, okay. Luke, will you tell us what you made here?
Yeah. So we did a raspberry spritz. We just built this on ice in a wine glass, but we used 3 ounces of the Cap Corse Blanc. We used 1 ounce of grapefruit juice, a 1/2 ounce of our new Farm Fresh series that we collaborated with the people from Botanist and Barrel, our raspberry syrup. And then we just topped it with a little bit of soda water and a lime wedge.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I knew that was going to be so pretty.
Yeah, that makes me happy.
Could drink this at the pool all day and
Yeah, this
call
is,
out for work.
Oh, hey, easy. At least you wouldn't do drinking at work. Nice
Yeah.
change.
Another thing you can do with a drink like this, and this is a characteristic of anything that's mistel based, is if you have a highly aromatic spirit, you can add a really small amount of it. You'll get the nose from that spirit, and nose is so important in cocktails, but it won't be super boozy. So this drink, you could totally add, even a 1/2 ounce of a good Blanco tequila would show through great, or an agricole rum.
We're going to try that trick
Yeah.
in one of the drinks
That's
later on.
right. I'm just setting you up for the second drink.
Yeah. You mentioned beer earlier. You had that picture of the Bobby beer, and beer also has mistel in it, right?
Yeah, all of our quinquinas are mistel based.
Got it. We've done a number of scaffas here where we'll lean in to the fortified aromatized and just kind of flip the ratio a bit.
Mhm.
And then we can serve nice room temperature cocktails to folks in the wintertime that have that, especially if you use something either funky like rum or like Isla Scotch, a little can really carry the nose. It's really, really lovely. So speaking of lovely, so is this. So we mentioned that you're from Haus Alpenz. Can you let us know what is Haus Alpenz?
I'll respond briefly, but I think Lee's perspective here, coming from he used to be one of our best customers and then came to work for us. So his perspective is really important here, but we're an import company. We started in 2005, 2006 timeframe when the cocktail community was much smaller. We started with a couple of indigenous Austrian products, but quickly expanded as folks literally would ask us, hey, can you find us a creme de violette? Can you find us a Batavia rack? Can you find us some good vermouth? We're very fortunate that we were able to find those things and when the community was small and could get known. But Lee's been there from almost the very start, so his perspective is a lot of fun here.
Yeah, so I started bartending around 1999, and my bartending accelerated around the time that Eric started Haus Alpenz. And so I think a lot of us all around the country were very hungry for things we couldn't get, things that we would see in old cocktail books and wonder, how to get that. And so, meeting Eric at Tales of the Cocktail in 2008 and, getting so excited about the things that he could get for me for my bar program, and getting those things set up in my state with a distributor. It was fantastic. I looked like, the great guy because I was helping shepherd all these things into my state. But Eric was just the one, giving me that opportunity to look like a good guy. And we had a lot of fun doing it. And it's great when you get all these new things into the country and you get to start playing with them. So Eric Seed made all that possible. So I was one of Jake's better customers from the middle of the country. So I when I was looking for an opportunity to move into a possible supplier role, I looked to Jake and Eric for advice. And and then, you know, their advice was, you know, come work for us. And so that worked out very nicely.
Are you still, so where are you based right now?
I live in Atlanta.
Okay.
When I started the job, I was living in Kansas City. KC, as anyone who's lived there will tell you, airport's a little bit challenging, and which it's being addressed now. But I decided to move to a city that has a true hub airport, and I had done some college in Atlanta, so I thought, I'll go back to Atlanta.
When you decided to jump from behind the bar to carrying a bag, as it were,
Yeah.
Was part of that informed by your desire to move, or did you just happen to want to move afterwards?
I did want to travel the country. I did want to, you know, caring about a bar, caring about your restaurant or your hotel, you have to have a certain amount of care and hospitality to do your job extraordinarily well, to care about the people that come in and spend money, and, you know, they become your friends and family. But you also sacrifice, you know, your traveling and your own things that you're putting aside that you're not doing sometimes. You never have a day off. You're always thinking about the place. And I knew that if I wanted to see the country as much as I wanted to see the country, that I had to make a move. And it was the time.
Yeah.
Did you find yourself really having to sell people on the products, or was this something that a lot of people already wanted and it kind of made it a little bit easier?
Well, I've always believed that if you really believe in something, people can see it in your eyes and your excitement level. I don't have much of a poker face. So when I like something or don't like something, it's pretty obvious to those that can see me. And so I've always found it easy to sell things that I love because, like I said, no poker face. I just can't hide how I feel. And, you know, Eric's got such a high litmus test for the things that he brings in. He takes guesswork out of it. Eric says no to a lot of things. And so the things that he decides to bring in they've checked so many boxes. So, yeah, I mean, when you go to still like third tier states, you know, that are still slower to develop, you know, the food and beverage culture, you know, yeah, there's still some selling that has to be done. But I mean, everyone loves great tasting things at, you know, fair prices. So Eric puts us in a pretty good position it's not like we're selling things to people that we don't believe in, or that we know the price is great and we believe the products. So, yeah.
It does make it really, yeah.
Pronunciation, sometimes that's a battle, but.
Well, folks here in North Carolina hearing your story about helping shepherd new products into market and talking to a distributor, it's like, oh, we can do almost none of that.
Yeah, it is, you know, the states are so different from each other. Every state has, it seems like, its own set of laws, and you all certainly, you know, you have obstacles. But there's always someone out there. There's always someone out there with more problems than you.
True enough.
And I would say they are just a few hundred miles north of you.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's different. It's difficult in Ohio. Let me tell you.
Okay. Yeah. I don't really know.
They've got it hard. Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard.
Well, I guess you talked about how Eric makes it easy on you and such. One thing that, Jake, you've said to me before, and I love the way you phrased it, is we've had people on the show that really are all about brand, you know, and how they branded the product and unapologetically about brand. It's not a bad word. It's like, this is not consistent with our brand, or this is consistent with our brand, or Eric Anderson from Hendrix said they liked model everything like so it looked Victorian because it, evoked whimsy. Brett Barish was talking about loving brands. He loved brands. But you have a different approach where you said we don't have any brands.
Yeah, we're allergic to the word. So look, let's take one layer, right? How our bottles and labels look is really important to us because retail sales are really important to us. So, it's not like we're just going to put something on, in a bottle and, scribble out a label and be done with it. So looks are important to us. But the word brand to me has so many negative connotations. When you start, especially, when you're selling on versatility, when you're selling cocktail ingredients. And so if I sell a cocktail ingredient to a place like Alley 26, or even to a good shop, I want them to be confident that they're going to be able to use that ingredient in many different ways. Well, then it's much more important, the perception of, someone like Shannon or someone like a good shopkeeper of that product, how they taste that product and how they think about using that product, than some preconceived, packaged notion of, well, this is how you should feel when you taste this product because this is our brand. At the same time, we are an importer, right? We represent wonderful producers. If we try to package up the way that we want people to think about a product into one slick, kind of way of looking at it, which some people might call that a brand, we're selling those producers short because those producers have a history and a tradition. Those producers, in many cases have, their raw ingredients are special. Thinking about the grapes in Mattei or the blueberries and other botanicals in Pasubio are great examples of that. The way they put those together is incredible and a sign of genius. And if we wrap that up in something that we might think of as a brand or branding, we're selling our producers short. So basically, our view of it is if you call a product you represent a brand, you're dissing both your customer and your supplier. But we realize we may be outside the mainstream here. Lee, you've seen it from both sides. I'm not sure if you have a different take on it, but
yes. Trying to think, how do I even say what I'm thinking?
Lightly.
Eric, I think Eric had a sound philosophy when he started the company, which was to bring in traditional products made in traditional ways. And hopefully at the same time, from families that have been doing it together for many generations. So you look at the dates, the origin dates of a lot of our things, and you look at 1800s, mostly some things, have a 17 something on the label, and Cappeletti, ooh, it's so new, they started making that in 1909. It's so young. But that's kind of the palette of Eric's seed, and if it's tradition, from a place, and people have been drinking and using and loving something for a very long time, exactly the same way, generation after generation, then there's something to that. And you don't require as much branding. You have this product, and it speaks for itself, really.
In a nicely packaged bottle.
In a lovely, Eric is so different from other suppliers. He has the relationships with the glass companies and the label makers in Europe. He goes and sees to those details himself. He does not parcel out those duties. He could easily do that. He could easily outsource, like somebody else see to the closures, the screw caps, the tops. But Eric is hands-on with every one of those details. And that's just not something that every supplier does it that way.
No, so to be clear, if I go to Europe and I buy Mattei, does it not packaged in this way?
Well, Jake can speak to, there's some legal things as far as, volume sizes that are legal and not legal here and there. But sometimes there's slight differences and sometimes they're exactly the same.
It varies from supplier to supplier. In the case of Mattei, those labels are used. Mattei have two lines. They have a basic line that they mainly try to sell on the island. And then you'll see in sort of funny type on the label Grand Reserve. And that's what they kind of sell for export, because they're going after more the cocktail market. And the Grand Reserve is more bitter, more intense. The same thing with beer. The beer you buy in a supermarket in France is not the same as the beer Grand Quinquina that they sell to good bars and to good shops, both in France and around the world. In the case of Dolan, we actually resurrected an old label of theirs to use, and then they started using it for the rest of the world.
Now they have some. So sorry, before we let too much time pass, we should probably move on to the next product.
Sure.
We'll move on to the Rouge real fast. Maybe we'll taste that by
And
itself.
if I may, I want to make sure that no one has walnut allergies.
Okay, that's good to know.
The color in the Rouge Mattei comes from the pith of black walnut. So I always want to make sure I let everyone know that before tasting.
Yeah.
You would assume, right, that they used a darker sugar, between the Blanc and the Rouge, but then you remember it's all natural sugars in there. How do they get the color? So it's the pith from the black walnuts.
Yeah, cheap, available, and bitter, and on the island. So a very classic signature. So with again, going back to this idea of these quinquinas as identity products, the Blanc captures the beauty of the grapes and the perfume of the great citrus. The Rouge also has the beauty of the grapes and the perfume of a different citrus, in this case bitter orange, but also captures sort of the fierce pride of the Corsican people. This one's a little more bitter. It's got more quinine. Those walnut husks also bring a fair amount of bitterness and drying character to the party, but in a supporting way, kind of in a similar part of the palate to the quinine. So what you end up with is a pretty gutsy quinquina. It comes across as very dry, with the acidity and that extra bitterness. But it's for mixology, and I don't use that word. I use that word advisedly for thinking about mixing. This wine, this quinquina, is something that can be unlocked in so many ways, and it's even good with Coca-Cola.
I was going to say it tastes like cola. There's a cola note in there.
There is a cola note in there, and that's from the bitter orange. The bitter orange is the same bitter orange that's used in cola. But there are other ways to unlock it. One of which is demonstrated in the cocktail. But I'll leave it to Lee because he's got some real favorites here.
Well, first, I want you guys to do the cocktail that you designed for this.
So,
so we are going through the cabin cruiser. We're going to be using 3 ounces per drink of the Cap Corse Rouge. We're going to use a ½ ounce of our blackberry syrup, a ½ ounce of reposado tequila. We're going to shake it, strain it, put it in a rocks glass. We're going to enjoy.
Yeah, we were riffing on this one earlier, and I really like it, but it really made me feel like we were on a cat. It's definitely a boat drink, but not a big boat.
Yeah.
There's no bartender on this boat. We're making them ourselves.
And if you want to make a really simple boat drink, do some Mattei Rouge with some grapefruit radler.
Oh, that sounds perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect.
Yes.
More on grapefruit radler later.
I do love that.
Now, fall is my favorite Mattei Rouge season because then I get to just show every day Mattei Rouge and Calvados to people.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
The way
I hadn't had it in a while, and I tried it this morning and was really delighted with it, how really nice and dry it So you expect it, because that color you expect is caramel. Like you mentioned earlier, you expect it to be caramel, but that's not what's going on.
Mhm. And more quinine than the Blanc had, measurably. So, you know, you get the bitterness of the quinine, but then you also get the tannin, you know, nature of some of those other botanicals that aren't in the Blanc. So a little more grip as well. It's been a lot of fun to work with.
You know, I mean, everybody that has a good idea looks good after the fact, right? Like if it works, of course, that was a great idea. It looks obvious. But clearly, this was not an obvious idea, or somebody would have been reporting it before Eric started. What was his, when he discovered it, what was his thought process? Did he share that with you?
So sometimes we like to joke that our product development process starts with seeing an old poster, which is entirely how Bonal started, to give
I
you
believe it.
a sense.
Au revoir, the appetit.
Yeah, but I'm gonna share my screen here real quick. We'll go through our website a little bit later, but Mattei, like all of the quinquinas, Mattei was absolutely one of the great advertising, one of the great marketing companies of its time, because again, it was trying to advertise Corsica. So this is one of their posters. There's a variety of things going on here. One is Mattei got so popular that it was copied by a lot of other companies. So this was trying to say the true Mattei. But there's Corsica. You got some nice sailboats. You got some nice water. You got the shadow from the sunshine. You know, it's all about marketing Corsica, and you know, we knew about those posters, and we knew about the company was still ongoing for certain, and so we got on a plane to Bastia and said hi.
Oh, really? You just showed up?
No, I mean email first. But
I'm coming.
if you go to Bastia, which is in the very north of the island, they have a shop in a grandiose old space in the middle of Bastia. The owners are also whiskey geeks, so they've got a nice little whiskey bar there, as well as selling and pouring Mattei. And there's a distillery associated with the producer as well. Makes, they make a little bit of whiskey, which isn't that great, but they also make some traditional distillates of the island. The pricing doesn't work, and they can't make enough of it for us, even if we wanted them to. But it's fun to taste them there. And Corsica is absolutely beautiful. Don't go in the summer; it's very crowded.
Okay. Note to, yeah, I don't ever go anywhere in the summer.
Yeah. So this drink, there's a lot of talking points to this drink. One is you can have a drink that's bright and refreshing, and you might even want to shake without having any citrus juice in it.
Yeah. Right.
Just the acidity of the wine, of the quinquina. The other is how gently wooded spirits unlock Mattei Rouge. That they, you know, the wood in a gently wooded spirit, whether that's Calvados or Reposado tequila or even Canadian whiskey, it just kind of adds another element of stimulation on the palate that's away from where the walnut husk and quinine stimulate. And so it just sort of makes you feel less of that intensity on the back of the tongue, but it opens up the grapes and the citrus and all the other things in Mattei Rouge to create a really cool cocktail.
Well, we're definitely stealing that trick of the grapefruit. We have this huge piece of grapefruit sticking out of the drink. So you basically, you know, put the garnish in their nose.
That's right.
So we're getting a nose full of grapefruit, which is kind of fun for two reasons. A, you get smells grapefruit and it's delicious, or it smells great. But it also kind of tricks you into thinking there's grapefruit in the drink in some more substantial way, which there is not. So that's the Cap Corse. We're going to move these along over here. Let's put those over there, make some room, and move straight on to Cappeletti here.
All right.
You guys talk about this as Aperitivo Cappeletti.
Yeah.
Now, this is part of, does this distillery make more stuff?
In fact, they do.
Do they make an Amaro that I might know of?
They make a few that you might know of. We bring in 4 Amari from them. One is Alta Verde, which is a wormwood Amaro that's very pale green in color. One is Sfumato, which is a pure Rabarbaro, nice and smoky. One is Elixir Novasalis, which is a sort of German-style Amaro that's very, very bitter for when you've had a lot to eat. And they make Pasubio, which we like to think of as Phil Collins' favorite Amaro, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But let's talk about Cappeletti, the people here.
Hold on. We've been talking about Phil Collins all day.
Yeah, right.
So Claire's here, and Claire and I were talking, and we come up with a drink with Pasubio, which we'll get to later. And I was like, is it wrong that I can't get Pasubio out of my head? And she's like, looked at me with a blank face. I'm like, Phil Collins? She's like, oh, the guy from Tarzan. I was like, what? So there's a real generational divide. The old man didn't know Phil Collins to the soundtrack for a Tarzan cartoon, but apparently it was very popular.
That was his golden years.
It was his golden years. Yeah,
Wow.
He was ready to retire. And then they didn't know Pasubio was a big hit. So there was definitely, what are you talking about, old man? I don't know what you're talking about.
Indeed. So the full name, Antica Erboristeria Cappeletti. Cappeletti are the people, 4 generations, currently run by a wonderful woman named Maddalena Cappeletti, whose brother Luigi is the arms and hands of the operation, and also the guy who finds just the right trace botanicals when he wants something perfect. Erboristeria means natural pharmacist. And that's what Cappeletti started as. Of course, alcohol and wine were what they made their preparations in, but there's still a pharmacist, a natural pharmacist in the town of Trento that has the old Cappeletti facade. It's not owned by the family anymore, but they still sell a lot of the products. And then Antica, you can think of Antica a lot of different ways. It just means old. But I think in context here, I think of Antica in terms of the tradition of botanical things in Italy as being pre-1919. And the reason for that is that before 1919, distilled alcohol was expensive. And so if you weren't in a big city where you might happen to be near an industrial distillery, you couldn't get a lot of alcohol or else you blow your budget. And so you had to learn to make things that were wine-based. And so the 2 things we're going to talk about from Cappeletti tonight are both wine-based because that's what they had. They're in the Alto Adige, in the north of Italy, surrounded by grapevines. And so they learned to do their botanical preparations with just a little bit of alcohol to extract the herbs, and then the wines either of the region or the wines that they traded. So Aperitivo Cappeletti is, if you hold it up, it's red. That color is a bat signal in the Italian drinks world. This is a thing we call a red bitter, same world as like Campari or Aperol. But being wine-based, it's got that great acid from the wine, and it's got the great body and texture from the wine, which means that it brings a nice refreshing character from the acid, and it doesn't have to be as sweet because the wine brings a lot of texture and richness to the party as well. You can use this in all of the red bitter ways. The normal red bitter ways, spritzes just with soda because the wine's already in there, or Negronis and things like that. But you guys have a hell of a cocktail to go in here.
Oh, yeah. Maybe we should make that.
Yeah. So we do have the barrelly bitter. We're going to be using an ounce of Hayman's Old Tom Gin.
So if you let Claire help you name cocktails, everything's going to be fun. Everything's going to be fun. And you catch me after my 3rd cup of coffee, like anything goes. So we're barely bitter on this one, but it's tasty. And who doesn't like strawberry?
Okay, on that note, so we're going to be making the barrelly bitter. We're going to be using our fresh strawberry syrup. We're going to use a 1/2 ounce per drink. We're going to be using 3/4 of an ounce of Solaire's. Am I messing that up already?
I think you said it right.
Did I say it
No,
right?
you got it.
Oh, okay, there we go. We're also going to be using 3/4 ounce of Cappeletti, and then topping it with an ounce of the Hayman's Old Tom Gin.
Yeah, sorry to use all of these other products.
Thank you.
There's a theme.
These other products are ones that maybe Lee helped shepherd in.
Well, I was extremely happy the first day that I got Heyman's Old Tom in my hands.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you that.
Same.
Yeah.
How would you differentiate Solaire's from, say, Suze?
Well, there's a wonderful book out there, which I kind of like the way that the format in which he did that. Amaro. We'll do like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the measurement. It'll say sweetness 1 to 5, bitterness 1 to 5, and that's a really simple way to look at it. You can go, okay, Solaire is slightly drier than Suze and has slightly more bitterness than Suze. So on that sliding scale, they're just passing each other, on the way from 1 to 5. But this is naturally colored, so for whatever reasons you're looking for, this is naturally colored. I don't know. I mean, I look at Solaire and I say, it reminds me of, when the farmer's market starts really getting going in spring and early summer, and you've got all those, fresh vegetables that you're working with. And Solaire just reminds me of all those garden vegetables. And it works on the palate for me in that way. So the bitterness is there, yes, but I think about the garden, same way I think about lowland agave, you get that
herbaceousness.
Yeah, you get that quality from your lowland tequilas, and I get the same things from Solaire.
Yeah, I mean, Suze is colored. Suze also has other flavors other than gentian, the root that is at core of both Suze and Solaire's. Suze has lemon flavoring and vanilla flavoring, and that's because in France, Suze is very much marketed toward a cafe culture, a drink on the rocks, something to linger over. And they wanted it to be yellow so everyone could see it across the room, and they put lemon and vanilla so everybody liked it. Solaire's is much more about expressing the roots, the gentian roots. They macerate the roots, redistill that, which is where you get all that great aroma. And then the color and the bitterness comes from a reinfusion of the roots into that distillate. But then, no color, no other flavors means that you can get it in and out of a cocktail very specifically. I love it for adding depth and finish to things, but I also just love it with San Pellegrino limonada.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. I love it for another reason. I like using it. I like it for all of the, actual applications it's intended. But we do a lot of education here. And what I really like about Solaire's, and the specificity of the flavor. I love Suze, don't get me wrong. Sorry, I know it's a product. It's delicious.
It's delicious.
But there's less specificity to that flavor. There's less gentian note. And gentian seems to be the bitter element. I don't care if the product is advertising some other bittering element on their label, they're still using gentian to some regard. We're using it in almost all of our sweet vermouths. We're using it clearly in Campari, Aperol. Like, even if they say we're using rhubarb, there's also gentian. So
King of the bitters.
I really love it as a way to taste staff specifically on gentian, so then they can pick that note up when they're tasting through the rest of the stuff. Have you found that to be helpful?
It's a large part of why we did the product in the first place, why we brought it in the first place.
Oh, hell yeah, cheers.
But because of that distillation step, when you distill something that's bitter, you lose all the bitterness. But it gets you all those high notes, all those farmer's market notes that Lee's talking about. And that's so evocative in a cocktail, and it's so much of the nose in the drink you're having right now. Lee, do you want to talk about some other, Cappeletti things other than Negronis and Spritzes?
Sorry, I just let Solaire steal the...
No worries.
and we have
Oh.
Old Tom. And Lee, you said, sorry to interrupt, but you said you were really, really happy when this got in. Was this the first Old Tom in your market?
It was the first Old Tom in my market. It was the first Heyman's gin in my market. And you know, it's the more the time that Jake and I spend with Heyman's, the more we keep learning from them about their history and their process. And you know, having that extra dose of cinnamon in the Old Tom, you know, there's just such a baking spice element to that Heyman's product. You know, it's very different from the London Dry or the Navy Strength. You know, it's not all the gin companies have different recipes for their different gins. You know, some people might use the same recipe for a Navy Strength and a lower proof dry gin, and just have them, you know, being differentiated by, ABV. But Heyman's has entirely different recipes. And so you do get that distinct profile. And so, you know, you've got that extra baking spice there, which is going to work with your strawberry, which is going to work with the Cappeletti. You're warming up those other things that you put alongside it. And so the choice of Old Tom versus, you know, London Dry, I think was a good one here.
Well, this is delicious.
Yeah.
This is outstanding. And same for us, by the way. In North Carolina, this was the first Old Tom that wasn't barrel aged or affected in some delicious but not necessarily traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no wine barrel on this one. It was kind of like the product was out front, and I really loved having it to play with. And I like you remember when we first got this in our market, I was very happy to have it. But
Well, and I also found the Old Tom to be a bridge for bartenders to get vodka drinkers into gin because of that lower ABV and that little bit of added sugar. It spoke better in my experience. It spoke better to vodka drinkers, and it was easier to get a vodka drinker into a gin cocktail with the Old Tom from Heyman's.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, most of them seem like they have like nightmares of drinking some sort of gin at one point, and the juniper, they felt like they were drinking a Christmas tree, and they'd never go back.
Yeah, and there's actually more juniper in that Old Tom than there is in the London Dry, but you don't get it because of
sugar.
Because of the cinnamon, because of the baking spice. It's, yeah.
Maybe this is throwing a bomb in the middle of this, but you know, juniper, when you distill it, doesn't taste like pine. People think juniper tastes like pine, I think because Tanqueray has that piney element. But juniper, when you distill it, is very full and rich on the palate. It's not piney.
Does this particular gin use orris root as well?
Oh yeah. The ultimate fixative.
Not as much as the London Dry, but yes, orris is still involved in all of the Heyman's gins.
It's not the juniper, just like you said, but Jake. It's the way that orris root boxes in the juniper.
Yep.
Will make it be piney. So it's not one or the other. It's the way that you use both, and apparently Tanqueray uses a lot.
But I've tasted juniper only distillates at Heyman's, and they're gorgeous and they're not piney.
Believe it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we got one more to taste. We should probably get on to that. So this is noticeably different in that, as you said, this is color-coded to bat signal. Like we know what we're drinking here, right? This is Vino Amaro. Normally when we think of Amaro, we think of spirit-based stuff. So, but you guys have a number of things labeled as Vino Amaro, right?
Correct. Yeah. And that just goes back to, you know, time and place. If you were doing bitter preparations in a small town before alcohol got cheap, then you used wine because it's what you had, and it wasn't getting any better, you know. Now, in the case of Pasubio, the base wine is actually brought in from Sicily and always has been, Marsala, because Cappeletti also was a wine merchant. And so Marsala was something they brought in enormous barrels. And they used it both for their stomach bitter, the Elisa Novasalis, but also for a lot of other preparations, including this recipe. But yeah, wine was what you had. And, North Carolina is a very specific case because, things that are wine-based are much easier to sell in North Carolina because you don't have to deal with the ABC. But they also bring a lot of texture and acidity and brightness to the party.
Lee, when did you guys release Amaro Pasubio? And were you with Haus Alpenz already, or were you still on the buyer side?
At what point?
When the Haus Alpenz started bringing in Amaro Pasubio?
So I joined the team in 2015. So, most of what we have was in the stable then. Now, Pasubio came since I've joined the company. Sfumato has come since I joined the company. Altaverde. Yeah, so 3 of the 5 Cappeletti have come since I've joined. But all 4 Haymans were on board before I joined. Cardamaro, Bonal, Beer, those were all established. Koki Dolan. So yeah. So we've added a few things since I've joined, the Mattei and the new Cappeletti items. But there's not much more we can do within these established categories as far as growth. So a lot of our new growth is in completely different categories, dessert wines and whatnot.
Like Rancio.
Yes, Rancio. Yes. Now the Dopo Teatro from Koki, that has been new since I joined. So it's a Vermouth Amaro from Koki. So yeah, that's 5 Vino Amaros that we have, I guess, technically.
I believe all 5 are for sale here at Alexander 6.
Yeah. Yes.
You better believe it.
Yeah.
So this is where I was going with that last question. Since you've been with the company, this product was launched.
Yes.
Can you speak to the difference in experience in having them come to you and you're like, this is delicious. On the buyer side, I'm going to do whatever I can to help you get this to market, or you being on the seller side and saying, hey, please buy this.
Well, I wish I had me to sell to still. That would be helpful. I'll always think about North Carolina when I think about Pasubio. One of my first trips to Asheville, there was myrtille grown in the mountains there. And, some of the breweries would use that myrtille when they were working with sour beer. And, it's myrtille that's giving the wild blueberry to this Pasubio. But it's myrtille from, from the mountains and the Dolomites. So just myrtille from 2 different places. But
can you explain what myrtille is?
So yeah, it's a wild blueberry, if you will, a little bit different, size and flavor. But I first really enjoyed myrtille at Wicked Weed and the Funkatorium. In Nashville. And so I was excited when this project got going. And we've been still very excited, always to work with this. You can go climb Mount Pasubio when you're in the area in the Dolomites, and you can see some of the ingredients growing along the side of the mountain as you're, hiking up there. It's a gorgeous area, whether you're doing summer or winter, mountain stuff. It's just a lovely area, and you smell in the air there what you smell when you're tasting this. It's fantastic. But yeah, it is unlike everything else out there, and that's what we love. You know, it's got that little bit of blueberry. It's got that scrub pine. It's got that little wisp of smoke. It's yeah.
There's Luigi Cappeletti cutting mugo pine, the tips of mugo pine branches, so that he can macerate them and put them in Amaro Pasubio.
Well, I take your word for it, what I could smell, but I might as well smell some.
So Pasubio, like I said, Marsala wine base, so fortified wine from Sicily, brings a lot of texture to the party. The two bitter botanicals here are this mugo and then a little bit of rhubarb root, which is smoky. But then the main flavor here are those mirtillo, those sweet wild mountain blueberries. Now, unlike the blueberries that Sal was picking, or the blueberries you get in the grocery store or at the great farms of Central North Carolina, they're highly acidic as well as being sweet, and they bring a ton of color to the party as well. So this is a great kind of starter Amaro for folks, but it's also just great with lemonade.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like when you talk about starter Amaro, that is what Jake said is so on the point. You know, you don't take someone that's never had Amaro and start them on Nova Salis or Fernet. You know, you start them on Pasubio or you know, maybe not even Montenegro, but I mean, you know, Pasubio definitely would be like one of those starter Amaros that, you know, serve it chilled, squeeze of lemon, and like somebody can adjust to that very easily. But if you get into some lemonade, then you know, hey, we're off to the races.
Yeah, this is pretty darn easy.
Yeah, I also like it as a shot next to a saison. That just works really, really well for me.
Nice.
Yeah, and then this cocktail sort of encapsulates everything we love about mixing with Pasubio. So go at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last one.
So we're gonna do the House of Blues. That's a HAUS. But we're gonna use a half ounce of our local fresh blueberry syrup.
This is a really imaginative pairing. Really.
Well, but it's important. It underscores that the blueberries in Pasubio are bringing some flavor, but they're bringing acidity, whereas those big, rich blueberries of North Carolina bring that full character.
Well, we're going to go an ounce into each string. Then we're going to go an ounce of lemon juice and an ounce of Smith & Cross rum.
You were talking about you're not going to go straight to Fernet or Pasubio. I think you might want to go to Fernet first.
Or before Nova Salis, yeah.
Sorry, Nova Salis. Yes,
Different worlds. Different worlds. Nova, folks out there, to give you a sense of Nova Salis, the traditional marketing tagline for Elisa Nova Salis, which is wine-based, you can buy it at Alley 26, is in Italian, quando ci vuole, or when you need it, you need it.
I love the Italians. They've come up with literally thousands of products to alleviate the problem you're clearly going to have of eating too much.
Yeah.
A whole, thousands of products. It's not one, thousands. I love it. So this cocktail, we did the thing you were talking about where we added just a little bit of spirit on top. And I will say, we happen to love Smith & Cross rum. I don't know if you've heard of it. I'm kidding. Of course, it's another Haus Alpenz product. But if folks are want a little less, it does such a good job of taking over. If folks want something a little subtle, they could also use a London Dry gin. Excuse me. They could use London Dry, but this Old Tom would be really, really delicious in this as well, but a very different drink.
Yes.
I think a lower proof wheated bourbon would work really well in this drink too.
There was some talk about high rye bourbon, I'll admit.
Yeah.
We did speak about one of our favorite wild turkey high rye bourbons earlier.
You can talk about wild turkey anytime you want.
We're huge fans.
Yeah. I think the only reason to think about using a softer bourbon in a cocktail like this is to let the Pasubio's acid and the tannin you get from the blueberries kind of be the structure of the drink rather than a lot of wood or a lot of dry rye spice.
Well, we had two reasons for going a different way. One is I don't believe you guys have whiskey
Nope.
that we can get. So, and since you have a lot of really delicious products that we sincerely love, we figured we'd just choose amongst those. And the other is we didn't want all of these to be like heavy hitters. Because to your point, honestly, a lot of these products really do well by making low craft drinks, like delicious, full, complex, low alcohol drinks.
And those are good for business.
Yeah.
You know, they make people happy. They make people eat food. They make people order more drinks.
They're fantastic if you have to close the bar.
Bar
Not
closing
if
is
you
good.
call them low ABV drinks, then nobody wants them.
That's right.
So Luke is referring to the time our
Call them
bartender
pork pounders.
is suggesting a drink that has less alcohol to a later in the evening patron that might not need a lot of alcohol.
Well, if you need some mint, you got the mint.
I do have the mint.
Go ahead and give it a nice little slap.
Special.
That's the fancy slap.
And you know, I'm fancy. But with this, somebody didn't care for my mint before, so
I think that's your coolers.
it's dying over here.
Yeah.
Dying over here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm my eyes perk up when I see the level of chill on your glassware.
Oh yeah, frozen, baby.
Yes.
You know, you can't affect every change, but the ones you can, you should.
Yeah, pre-COVID, we had 4 freezers back here just for glassware. Oh, those days.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers, Claire.
Cheers, Claire. Fellas.
Wow, gorgeous.
Are there any guests or any viewers still with us that have any questions?
Do you guys carry Barolo Chinato?
We do. Yes, we do. So, speaking of Cappeletti, is there a through line to that question? That was a question for the Haus Alpenz fellas.
Oh, in what sense?
Cappeletti does make a Barolo Canado.
No, Koki does. Koki makes a Barolo Canado. Because Koki are in Piedmont, Cappeletti are in Trentino. So Koki are where the Barolo is. So they make a fantastic Barolo Canado. A little bit on the rounder sweet spice side, which makes it particularly good with chocolate and chocolate desserts, and maybe not quite as medicinal as some other great Barolo Canati, but a fantastic Barolo Canado.
So you mentioned where is it? Over there. You mentioned walnuts before. Does the Koki Canado also use walnuts?
No, that's something that's very Corsican. And something that's in general, walnuts are a subalpine thing rather than an alpine thing. And Koki's a little too close to the mountains to think walnuts.
I've had it as a suggested pairing. Have you had that before?
Yeah, I mean, it's Barolo Canado definitely falls in that, chocolate cigars part of the evening and walnuts, which aren't quite as, walnut meats, which aren't as bitter or are nice in that world as well.
Okay. Great question. Thank you. You have any other questions here?
Are there any questions in the chat?
I don't think we got to them.
Okay.
I did want to take a minute to show folks very quickly around our website so they can find even more information than we've tried to bring at you today. Our website is at alpenz.com. So here's the front page. There's a cocktail that changes every so often, and then a few articles. But if you want to get into the meat of the products, you can do it a few ways. You can download a PDF catalog of all of our stuff, which always has a wonderful cover. This is taken from an old beer ad, and then goes into some book learning and then into products. Or you can go into the drop downs. So wines will include both the aromatized wines as well as our table wine and oxidized wine selections. The most important thing for you, all of you in North Carolina, is everything under this wines tab is stuff that you can buy at a wine shop or at Alley 26 without having to go to the ABC store. And then spirits will be the stuff that is considered spirits. You can also go by producer. So if you want to see everything from Cappeletti after talking about Cappeletti and Pasubio, here's everything that Cappeletti does. Cappeletti, Alta Verde and Sfumato, the two spirit-based Amari, Pasubio, and then Elixir Novasalis, which is that crazy stomach bitter. If you click on a product page, you'll get more information, including some nice bullet points, storage and handling information about the producer, the category, and then the big stuff is down here, the recipes. So there's a few recipes here. If you click See All Recipes, you'll get all of the recipes in our recipe database that incorporate, in this case, Pasubio. Most of these photos are taken by Lee Edwards, who is a master cocktail photographer. Now, if you just want to look for recipes, you go up here to the top, you click on Recipes, and here's our recipe database, currently sitting at 550. I'm hoping once Shannon sends us a data dump of all theirs, it'll be about 1,550. So they're just in alphabetical order here. If you know the name, you can search on name, or if you want to go by product, there's a drop down here. By product. So if you wanted, say, all Mattei Rouge cocktails, here they are. Some really great photos here. Then if you want to go back, you can reset. But then you can also filter on how ABV, how it's built, base, modifier, etc. So very versatile, very useful. It even works pretty well on a phone. Although if you're doing the recipe database on a phone, I would turn your phone landscape. So a lot more information here, a lot more on our social media. And our YouTube channel, Haus Alpenz, also, but everything's Haus Alpenz, all one word. So, yeah, very brief look at where you can get even more information than we got tonight.
So the website is Alpenz.
Alpenz.com, yeah.
But everything else is Haus Alpenz.
Correct.
Perfect. Okay. Excellent. So we went through the four products of y'all's, and I know that's clearly the tiniest tip of the iceberg, even of your aromatized fortified, which we really love to carry here. If you said that, Lee, you said that these categories were kind of full, and for growth, you're looking at other categories. Where do you think Haus Alpenz is headed next as far as category growth?
Well, we've created another division called Soda Alone Selections, and in there we deal with Madeira, Marsala, another old Portuguese dessert wine category called Carcavelos. We deal with Rancio Sec. We deal with Banyuls. So, a lot of these dessert wines have oxidative nature to them. Some of them, see a lot more time in wood than others, but a lot of them see significant time in wood, in oak. And we did just bring in a Riva salt for the first time, so that's another category. But you know, we're bringing in more Rancio producers, and there's only 2 Carcavelos producers, and we've got both of them. And there's only 7 or 8 wineries on the island of Madeira, and we've got our Madeira producer. So, but there's still a lot to do with all of those deep, you know, catalogs from you know, Enrique and Enrique. That's such a deep history for that family, and you see those ages. That stuff gets very old.
The Rancio, Jake, you were scrolling through there.
Yeah.
Is there any way you could pull up the picture? If you go up, the picture of, I thought this was a really interesting picture of the Rancio Sec, like out in the fields.
Ah, yes.
The amazing, like, idea of, there you go, of technique rather than, like, they took clearly fruit, but the technique is just as important with this product.
Yeah, so Rancio Sec is a tradition of Catalonia on both sides of the border. Remember, Catalonia straddles Spain and France, and most of our producers are from the French side. But it dates, you know, it's a style of wine that dates back to at least ancient Rome, right? If you go back to ancient times, there was kind of 3 kinds of wine made. There was something akin to Nouveau, you know, make it, drink it. There were aromatized wines, which was the bulk of really what people were drinking. But then the really special kind of family reserve wines were wines that spent a long time, first in clay and then eventually in wood, and were kept for special occasions or for particular moments. That tradition lives on in Catalonia, and there's a few producers that are selling a bit of the wine, but it's still made the same way. You take wine that's high enough alcohol naturally so that it doesn't turn to vinegar, so you know, generally north of about 15%, and you oxidize the living daylights out of it, and then stick it in barrel for a real long time. So this producer, Rombo, they take old vine, various stuff, mainly Grenache Blanc, and they take part of it and they put it in these glass jugs out in the sun, and the rest go in barrels, which are also out in the sun about 100 feet from where these demijohns are. And the wine literally never goes inside till it's time to bottle. And the heat and the evaporation and the oxygen do the work, and you create these things that they don't have any semblance of fruit for sure, but they have this incredible umami and this incredible persistence and intensity, and they go so well with all the things you think of eating when you're there. Things like preserved seafood, conservas, or amazing hams or cheeses. And it's you know, if you've gone over visiting to a house in Catalonia in the afternoon, if they serve you Rancio with your hams and cheeses instead of vermouth, you know that you are in very good graces indeed.
I've always thought I saw those pictures the first time you showed them to me, and I was just like, what the hell are they doing? I love this.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Well, and those wines, they perform double duty in the restaurant. You know, they're fantastic for the sommelier to pair with the foods that Jake was mentioning. They're also very fun for the bar people to work with. You get so much acid and so many fantastic flavors, and it's a product that you cannot kill. It's already seen heat and oxidation, so it can stay unrefrigerated for years on the back bar, and it doesn't change quality level, which is fantastic to have something that you don't have to refrigerate. That is wine, you know, and they make pretty tasty cocktails as well.
We like tasty cocktails.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think we're getting it. Claire's giving me the "we've kept them on too long" sign.
Pulled out the wrap it up box.
We could go for hours. I know both you guys are knee deep in the knowledge, and we would love to pick your brains some more, but I don't want to keep you here all night. But we do want to say thanks for coming and being part of this. And we can't wait till the, what did you call it earlier? The panorama is over. We had someone in today and she referred to it as the panorama, and we're like, I'm stealing that. Oh, what we've seen during the panorama. Usually at this time, we usually do some giveaways, and we have a couple of things to give away. No, we got some syrups. Yeah. So we usually ask some questions based on what we spoke about, and either A, I can have y'all ask a trivia question based on one of these products that we talked about earlier, or we can just ask them.
You guys are the professionals here.
Says the man with the garden gnome behind him. Okay.
Ouch.
Hey, that was your joke. That's. I'm not being mean. That's your joke. Okay. There are two grapes that Jake mentioned that we use in the making of Cap Corse, the Mattei Cap Corse Blanc. Or is it in both of them? Same grapes? That's a
Yes.
Okay. Mention one or both. That'd be great. Win one of our syrups. Okay. What was that?
There's one.
Okay. We have I can't see from here. So.
Patty's got Moscato.
There you go, Patty Ringer. Okay, Patty.
And there's the other one.
Yeah, it'll be waiting for you. Hopefully tomorrow.
Now, are we doing, they get to choose which one they'd like?
Sure, Patty.
Like-
Which one do you like? What did Randy say?
Randy was correct,
Yeah.
but he accidentally said 5
Okay. Well, I think we can spare an extra syrup for
Yeah.
as well.
What are the 4 options?
Pardon me?
What are the 4 options on this?
We do have a raspberry, a blackberry, and a blueberry that we all got from the Cedar Grove Farm, aka the Botanists and Barrel people. And then we do have a fresh strawberry syrup that's coming from Georgia.
I'd like to try the blackberry. Please.
There it is.
Thank you.
We'll mail it to you.
It'll be here.
In case we don't see you again, you know.
Randy, which would you like?
I would like the blackberry as well.
Sounds good.
Good thing I got more than 2.
Luke, you got a question you want to ask?
I did, and I just blanked on it.
Outstanding.
Yeah, ask one more and I'll come back to it.
Okay, I can ask one more. Oh, I don't know how this. People always accuse me of asking difficult questions, but I'm like, things I find interesting, I remember. Okay, I'm gonna ask one. If nobody gets it, that's fine. We'll go ask another one. There's a really cool football and a half sized citrus that you use the peel off of or the skin off of for the aromatic qualities, much like Curacao and Curacao. Randy already got it. Okay, Randy already got it. Thanks, Randy.
I'm sorry, I pay attention.
Yeah.
You're hired.
On. Outstanding. Outstanding. You have one more?
Yeah. If I had a walnut allergy, which product would I stay away from? Stay away.
Patty's right.
Okay. Well, 2 and 2, man.
Okay, Patty. I guess Randy and Patty, we owe you both another one. You want another flavor?
No, I'm good. I'm good on syrups. Thanks.
Randy?
I'm good, thank you. Appreciate it though.
Okay. Okay, this is what happens when they're too regular, apparently. They're like, no, I got that already.
Well, maybe we just get you a drink next time.
Yeah, that's okay.
We got a
We'll-
drink for you.
We'll find you. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you very much.
Really appreciate your time and your knowledge, willing to share both with us. We really love your products, as you can tell. Our next week, we have a guest, Ben Boyce of Balmore, who's Dalmore, excuse me. Wrong vowel. That's not even a vowel.
That's not a vowel
Not
either.
even a vowel.
No, I got you. Okay, so next week we do have Ben Boyce. He is the national brand ambassador for Dalmore. We'll be going through a number of their tastings and then offering those scotches as a Whiskey Wednesday. I believe we're bringing in the 12-year, 15, 18, and Portwood. We'll be making a cocktail with the 12-year. That is up to Ben, but we'll be offering it. So tune in next week if you like scotch. And we are moving it to 7. So it'll be at 7 instead of 6. Don't want to interrupt anybody's dinner. I know I'm hungry.
You're always
but,
hungry.
You know, try to make it easy for you.
Thank
Either
you
way.
very much, fellas. Sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you very much, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks for a great evening.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jake.
Enjoy. Happy
Thanks,
mixing.
everybody.